Hey, Starly here. Today I'll be talking about my first full-time graphic design job, which was at Teespring. It was a very difficult journey to get there, and I am not at all the greatest graphic designer, and I'm mainly a comics artist, but I was able to do it, and I believe you can do it too. So you can also have an art-related career. I have a 4-year degree, but you don't necessarily need one, and I'll be talking a bit about that as well. I really hope this video will give you some insights and ideas that may help you land a full-time job. I'll be playing a time-lapse of an illustration I did recently in the background while I talk, and I've got a full version of that, link at the top right or in the description to watch after you finish this video. In 2008, the United States went through a Great Recession. Jobs were lost, houses were foreclosed. It was a tough time, and it was also the year I graduated from college. When I was graduating, my classmates were talking about how they wanted careers starting at $50,000 a year, and I just thought I'd be happy with less than that, especially considering that even though I made huge improvements with my design skills, I was still not nearly as good a designer as everyone else. See this photo? This is my senior thesis. Embarrassing now, even though I was really proud of it at the time. Reality is harsh, and finding a career at all would take me years. Years is way too long a time that many of us don't have. So I'll be going over some mistakes I made here during those years that I believe really set me back, and you can avoid them. The first and biggest mistake I made was not understanding my full potential. When I graduated college and moved back to my home state, my peers around me were all in minimum wage or just above minimum wage jobs. I fell into this trap that a minimum wage job is the only choice I had. And with news of a recession everywhere, that really doubled down that finding a job, any job, was what I had to do. I immediately fell into minimum wage hell, to say the least. I was lucky in a way that I didn't get stuck working as a cashier at the local grocery chain store, but rather a small gallery store that sold fine arts and crafts. So the environment was at least pleasant to work in, as it was filled with art and bright colors, and I oftentimes was by myself, which is nice for someone like me who is a recluse. It may have been nice, but it was still a part-time minimum wage job, and that wasn't enough for me to live off of. My partner and I were struggling a lot. We just barely missed the age cutoff for the new Affordable Care Act, so we didn't have health insurance. We had to get food stamps, we weren't able to go to the dentist, and had to take on debt when my husband had to have his wisdom teeth extracted. All of this felt normal to us because it was normal to everyone around us. During the 5 years I worked at the gallery store, I was putting in some effort to find a new job, but not nearly as much as I should have been. Part of this was because of the aforementioned situation of doing what everyone else is doing, and part of it was because I became addicted to an MMORPG. MMOs are fun and you can make friends with them, but it's also easy to let them consume your life. So if you do play games, make sure to schedule times to play that allow you time to work on building your art, resume, and portfolio. Please don't stay up until 2 a.m. stuck in a dungeon like I did. I also felt like the most I could get for a job was something very entry level or basic, like an internship. I had a few interviews, but all the jobs I interviewed at, I felt I couldn't do them because they were above my level. I didn't have an internship before, so I really felt like I was lacking professional skills. Here's a quick tip. Get an internship. Getting your foot in the door can really help jumpstart your career. It was at the beginning of 2013, I was scouring job postings and came across a paid part-time internship looking for people who know how to use Illustrator. I sent in my resume, had an interview, and was able to finally get my first graphic design job ever. Another quick tip, learn Illustrator. A lot of businesses use Adobe Creative Cloud, whether you like it or not. So knowing how to use Illustrator and Photoshop will be a huge boost in helping to launch a career. If you can't afford these, I would recommend trying free or cheaper options such as Inkscape or Affinity Designer, and then watching video tutorials on Illustrator so you can learn about the tools and options Illustrator has that other programs don't. If you don't have a lot of time, you can still learn in just an hour a day here and there. I have taught people how to use Illustrator from scratch before, just sitting next to them and pointing out, go here, click that, use this quick key. I would spend 2 days doing this. The next few days they'd ask a question here and there, and after a week would be able to use it almost completely on their own. They didn't have a degree in art, had barely touched Illustrator, and yet they were able to get a job that was editing images. The key is to not learn everything about Illustrator. I can make a video going over these if anyone is interested, just let me know in the comments. Getting back to the internship itself, it was really simple work. The company makes class rings. Here's one I found online as an example. Many of their designs were on paper in filing cabinets, and they needed them vectorized, and for some, they were in another vector program called CorelDRAW, which needed to be converted to Illustrator files. Easy, but time-consuming, so this was the perfect internship for me since I desperately needed more experience. It is important to not sell yourself short though. It's rare to find a job where you'll know how to do everything. Every business is different. I've had 3 full-time jobs since the internship and have learned new things at all of them. As I mentioned before about teaching people to use Illustrator, we even hired people who didn't know Illustrator to work a job using Illustrator. I taught them on the job how to use it. With this internship, it had been almost 5 years since I really used Illustrator, so getting that refresher helped a lot. The internship was temporary with potential for a full-time job. Of course, they didn't hire any of the interns full-time. So as the summer approached, the internship ended. Around August of 2013 was a huge change for me. As the internship ended, I got married, and I would also begin my first full-time job as a graphic designer at Teespring. Before I get into Teespring specifically though, I do want to talk about this really important point. As I mentioned, when I graduated, I was working minimum wage jobs for 5 years because of the recession, because of the people around me. I thought it was the only option I had. This is completely wrong, at least for where I was living, so it may be different where you live, but even then, there might be potential jobs available that you don't even know exist. We didn't know there were even full-time jobs all around us that were entry-level or didn't require any special skills and paid a bit above minimum wage and would provide full benefits. For example, my husband works at Big Orange hardware store. It isn't paying a fortune or anything, but that wage and those benefits would have helped us a lot when we were really struggling with money. I also had no idea that a place that manufactures class rings existed, let alone it being a 20-minute drive from where I lived. In fact, there's a decent amount of manufacturers here, and some of them need graphic artists. Usually when you think of a job as a graphic designer, you think of a design firm dealing with clients. But many in-house jobs do exist, and a lot of them are just setting up pre-production files in Illustrator, so you don't have to be a good designer for this type of job, since the majority of the work is more technical. All the jobs I've had have been in-house jobs. I haven't worked for a design firm. Don't limit yourself to just places that focus on design work. Networking helps a lot too. I'll get into how networking got me my second full-time job later in the video. Now that all the backstory leading up to the job is out of the way, it's finally time to get into how I actually landed the job at Teespring. This was actually a really unique experience and some things I don't recommend. I had found the job listing on a job site such as Indeed or the like, and from what I remember, it was a bit sus from the beginning. It wasn't quite like a normal job posting. I can't remember the details, but it sounded like something I could potentially do. So I tweaked my resume a bit and sent it off. As a graphic designer or artist, you have to have a resume that's designed. You cannot just do a Word document. I have seen many of these and we always immediately pass over them, so please be sure to make your resume look fully designed, even if it's really simple. Here's what my most recent resume looks like, for example. The resume I sent to Teespring was pretty basic. It was even in black and white, I think, but I definitely recommend adding in color. Regardless, whatever it was, I was able to get an email back showing interest, so that was a good thing for sure. This was also a very busy time for me though. As I mentioned, I just got married, I just finished up my part-time internship, I was still working part-time at the gallery shop, and there was a local convention going on that my husband and I were attending. So that was taking up a lot of time. In the email I got back, they were asking me to do a test of my skills. Typically, tests to get a job are red flags. I would always be wary of them since you can do work for free and they steal that work and use it for whatever purpose. But at this point, I was very desperate for a career and was willing to do it. They sent over 4 or 5 images they were asking me to vectorize. Except when I looked at the images, I knew right away one of them, with my skill levels at the job, would take about 4 to 5 hours, and another would take 8 to 10 hours. This was a lot of time to spend on a test, plus we were at the convention for a long time throughout the weekend. What I did though was, I persevered like hell to get them done. I wanted this job, but I had been through so many rejections. I was so discouraged, I was even crying at times doing these vectorizations because I thought I was wasting my time. But I also thought, even if it's just a 1% chance to get this job, I gotta do this. I can't say at this point here there was some surge of, yes, I can do it. It was sheer perseverance with very little confidence. But I did it. Somehow I finished them and sent them off. And then I got a message or maybe a phone call asking if I could come in and start working. So yeah, that was it. But not quite. There was another red flag as they wanted me to work for a month and then evaluate at the end if I should continue as a permanent full-time employee. Pretty sus, but also again, desperate. This was also before Teespring had any name recognition, so that didn't help either. I told them though I could only start working part-time since I didn't want to just quit my other part-time job. Amazingly, the 2 jobs were right down the street from each other, no more than a 5-minute drive apart, so that was very favorable in being able to work 2 jobs, so that's how the month went. I started designing t-shirts. A lot of it was sports related and for Facebook groups at the time. Here's an example of a shirt design I did very early on that got some relatively good sales on it. And here's a few more I did later on. At the end of the month, they decided I was good enough to hire me permanently full-time. I had to say goodbye to my gallery job, which was sad because it was a nice place to work, but I had to go with this new opportunity and I have no regrets about it. There's a lot more I could say here regarding aspects of the job and how I was able to get a promotion and a pay raise, but maybe I'll do that in a future video. If people are interested, just let me know. So, long story short about Teespring, there were several rounds of big layoffs. I also want to say that Teespring now is nothing like when I was there. They're now known as Spring, they have a new CEO, nobody that I work directly with works there now. So please keep in mind that my commentary is not at all applicable to the current Spring. I was able to stay through 3 rounds of layoffs and was even working from home full time at one point. But eventually I was also laid off and had to find a new job. Now that I had worked for Teespring, I was feeling way more confident in my skill set, and now I had 4 solid years of professional experience plus the half year of internship experience. But after being laid off, I was still having trouble finding a new job. This is where networking helped. I had stayed friends on Facebook with my old manager from Teespring, and he was working at another place that was making custom printed apparel. He knew my personality and skill set and really wanted me to work for them. I was able to get my second job completely from networking. I reworked my resume a bit, had an interview with my old manager who was going to become my new manager, and landed the job. I worked there for 5 years until they also had layoffs, which I won't get into. So now I'm at my current job. I have a lot of experience from my previous job, so my resume is looking great. As per usual though, as I was applying to jobs, I still got a lot of rejections. Don't let the rejections discourage you. No matter the experience level, rejections will happen. I kept a record since I had to for unemployment reasons, but I applied to 18 jobs, received 7 rejections, ignored by 10, and was interviewed and hired by 1. This was in the span of 6 weeks. Now, I wasn't trying really hard at finding a new job since I've also been trying to turn to freelancing, so the number of applications is the minimum required by unemployment. My current job is working for a local small screen printing business, so I am still working in printed apparel. Printed apparel is everywhere and booming, so it's a great option for designers and artists. The place I work at will even hire people without experience, so it is possible, and I believe a lot of what helps if you don't have experience is to have the right attitude. If you're motivated, willing to do the work, and generally have a positive attitude, make sure that comes across in your resume and your interview, and be genuine about it. I could also go into pay rates here and what is and is not acceptable, but this video is already pretty long, so if you would like to hear more about it, please let me know in the comments. Check out some of my other videos, as I have a number of them now going over how to use Clip Studio Paint, some opinion videos, and time lapses of pretty art. I will be making more videos like this one, so if you enjoyed it, please be sure to hit the subscribe button so you can learn more, help jumpstart your career, and improve your art. Check out some of my other videos, as I have a number... Oh god. Dude, stop slamming the fucking door.